Joining us now, Dr. Amit Mitra. He is a leading economist, of course, a Trinamool Congress leader, somebody who's looked at budgets for decades and decades. Thanks very much for being with us. A substantial bit of what the finance minister focused on was on skill development. That's obviously critical as we go forward. The Skill India mission has trained 1.4 crore youth. The Skill India mission has upskilled 54 lakh people. Do you believe that this is important? Or do you believe that we need to see more in terms of how many jobs have actually been generated from skilled or upskilled people?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Vishnu. We know that the numbers look very nice, but in fact, jobs don't get generated. Approximately 24,000 jobs may have been generated out of crores that are being trained. But let me take you to the more fundamental issue. What is the state of these people that you're training? Today, 42 million people are unemployed in India. Nobody speaks about that. The unemployment rate, according to government, is 9.05%. Let me come to the second issue, youth unemployment. See, you're training people, they're youth. It is shocking that 44.5% of those in the age group of 20 to 24 are unemployed today. Now we talk about demographic dividend, and in the budget, demography was one of the issues talked about. This is demographic deficit. Let me also ask myself, how many people were added to the labor force since 2018? 135 million people joined the labor force. How many of them got jobs in the formal sector? You'll be shocked. Only 5 million out of 135 that joined. And the last point I'd like to make on this, 450 million people in India today are either not working or have given up looking for jobs. That's larger than the US population. 450 million people, but I don't see the media or anybody debating this issue. You're talking about job training. What about the state of the unemployed?
Yep.
What about the people who have given up? They've left the labor force. 450 million either are not looking for jobs.
Dr. Mitra, I take your point. I take your point. I suppose the government would counter that statistic by saying, and this is again in the budget, that 25 crore people have been elevated from multidimensional poverty in 10 years.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is you suddenly speak of multidimensional, the government speaks of multidimensional poverty. That has 12 indicators. 2 of those are cell phone. One is cell phone, the other is bank accounts. Now, we all know what happened with Jan Dhan bank accounts. They are zero balance bank accounts. So I think instead of contesting that, I would rather go to the people who really matter in terms of poverty. That's the agricultural sector. Are you aware that the real wages of agricultural workers have fallen? And I refer to Dr. Gulati, who's a supporter of the government. In his recent article, he has shown that real wages of agricultural workers have fallen. Now, share of workforce in agriculture for the first time after many years have started growing. You're supposed to go from agriculture to manufacturing. But manufacturing is going at 0.8%, less than 1%. So people are going back to rural sector, looking for that 100 days work. 45.5% people have just gone back to the rural sector for the first time. Share of workforce in agriculture is 45.5%. But nobody talks about it.
Dr. Mitra, the capital expenditure outlay for the next year is being increased by 11%, which is 3.4% of the GDP. Don't you think these are spaces where employment opportunities or options will be created?
I think you're right. Capital expenditure is, in fact, a good thing, not at the cost of the poor and the unemployed, because they go hand in hand. But have you looked at what as part of it has been spent? You'll be surprised to know that the capital expenditure, in terms of government's own expenditure, only 50% of that was spent. And most importantly, the capital assistance. You'll be surprised to know that only 34% of that which was allocated was expended. So my question to you is, it is very nice to have these large capital expenditure figures. Now, let me also add that corporate taxes were cut in 2019. Why? Corporates will invest. They didn't invest. Now that they didn't invest, you want to fill it with government expenditure because you have no other option. When you do that, you also build up debt. Are you aware that the debt GDP ratio has been warned by International Monetary Fund, saying, hey, wait a second, very soon you'll have 100% of GDP as debt. If any shock happens in the global economy, which can happen anytime.
Right.
So my concern is that while you allocate capital expenditure, you don't spend it. What you do as assistance of capital expenditure, that you don't release. So who are we talking to?
And private sector investment
Why doesn't the media talk about that?
is a concern.
Question them.